بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to continue our study of outlines of transcendent philosophy. And as you remember, we were talking about substantial motion, about harakat jawhari. And there is a remaining from discussion about harakat jawhari, and then inshallah we will start the next lesson about knowledge by presence or ilm huzuri. We talked about possibility of substantial motion, and we said that the problem that previous philosophers had raised about harakat jawhari was that there is no same subject or mutaharrik. If accidents or a'raz change, we can say this is the same thing because substance is the same. But if substance also changes, then how we can say this is the same thing? And we said that according to Mulla Sadra, there is no problem. Substance can even change. And we said that actually when accidents change, also substance is changing. There is no way that substance remains the same and accidents change. And there is no way that substance changes and accidents remain the same. They are very much connected with each other. Then towards the end of last session, we talked about this philosophical rule when they say that everything that is حادث كل حادث مسبوق بمادة وقوة تحمله. Everything which happens is preceded by a matter, a madde, and potentiality that it carries. We said when it comes to haraka is not hadis. Haraka is a type of wujud. Therefore, we can say is a type of huduth, not hadis. Jawhar and araz are for mahiyya. Haraka is a type of existence. Wujud sayyal. It's a type of existence which is dynamic, which is ongoing. So we talked about these things, and now what Sheikh Ubudiyat mentions afterwards is that when a matter expires and another matter comes, one is za'il. Za'il means it expires. The new one is hadis. So according to Mulla Sadra, who believes in wujud sayyal, then we don't have one stop after another stop. We have an ongoing existence like a river, and at each point something from past has gone, has expired, something about future has not yet come. And also according to Mulla Sadra, because there is ittihad, there is a kind of tarkib ittihadi, a kind of combination between madde and surat, which makes them one being, not two separate beings. So we can say madde is changing, surah is also changing, and these are like two aspects, two considerations of the same thing. The text is this towards end of page 118. بلکه به موجب ترکیب اتحادی صورت و ماده که صدر المتعلهین بر آن تأکید می‌ورزد. According to type of combination between madde and surah which brings unity, اتحادی, that Mulla Sadra emphasizes on, and inshallah later in this book we will discuss. باید گفت, we should say according to this idea, that امری سیال وجود دارد. There is something which is going on. One thing, one being. هر جزء یا مقطع فرضی آن به اعتباری صورت و به اعتباری دیگر ماده حامل صورت و به اعتباری استعداد صورت بعدی است. Every part that you imagine, because we don't have parts after parts, is one ongoing, one continuous thing. You can imagine this portion of it. By you considering this portion, it doesn't become disconnected from the rest. It is farzi, it's just by assumption. Any part, any portion that you consider, from one aspect, with one consideration, you can say, this is surah, this is the form. From another consideration, you can say, this is madde for surah, because surah and madde are muttahid. From the third consideration, you can say, this is potentiality for the next surah, because the same thing which has potentiality has actuality for the current situation and potentiality for future. خب, why harakat doesn't need a fixed subject? If you go to the arguments that we mentioned for harakah, especially if you go to argument 4, so we realize that why, according to Mulla Sadra, there is no need for fixed subject, because we have fard sayyal, and this continuity of harakah in the same thing brings unity. As long as it is the same thing which is changing and there is no stop, no gap, you can say it's the same thing. If there is a water which is flowing and it has not stopped, we can say it's the same water. The same thing is continuing. If harakah was a stop after a stop, then we couldn't have the same subject. We couldn't say this is the same thing. But now, because it doesn't stop, we can say it's the same thing. So, از آنجا که اتصال و پیوستگی, connectedness, to be continuous, is one of the things that bring unity, brings وحدت شخصی. We can say this is one person, one thing. تشخص, as you remember, we talked about تشخص means being one. So because of this اتصال, then we have no issue. از آنجا که اتصال و پیوستگی از اموری است که ملاک وحدت شخصی اند، حرکت خود به خود یک فرایند واحد شخصی است. Since continuity and connectedness are some of the things that bring unity, therefore we can say this harakah is one unit, not endless stops or endless smaller harakah which are just put next to each other. No, it's one thing. Then he says, asasan, basically, if harakah was putting disconnected things one after the other without any continuity, we could not say this is the same thing. We could not say this is the same thing. If we had one thing, then it stops, then another thing, it stops, another thing. You could not say they are the same when there was no continuity. conclusion is this on page 121. نتیجه این که حرکت از آن جهت که حرکت است به موضوعی ثابت و باقی نیاز ندارد. حرکت as so far as it is حرکت means by itself doesn't need a fixed subject. There is no need. پس نبود چنین موضوعی در حرکت جوهری مستلزم نفی آن نیست. So if we don't have such a fixed subject in حرکت جوهری, this is not a problem because حرکت as such doesn't need fixed subject. یعنی حرکت در جوهر نیز همانند حرکت در اعراض امری ممکن است. نما. So substantial motion is like motion in accidents. It's possible. But now we have another heading. اثبات حرکت جوهری. To prove that حرکت will exist. Because sometimes you say حرکت جوهری is possible. Unlike what previous philosophers used to say, they were saying it's impossible because there's no fixed subject. Mulla Sadra solved this problem. It means it is possible. But to say it is possible is different from saying that it happens. Maybe something is mumkin but doesn't exist. Like dinosaurs are possible to exist, but they don't exist anymore. Okay? So, imkan is different from tahaqquq, from existence. Now, Mulla Sadra has 9 arguments to prove that harakat jawhari happens. In order to prove harakat, he has 9 arguments. Some of these arguments prove harakat jawhari in صور نوعیه و طبیعت in the nature and those forms which make different species. صور نوعیه like ناطق for insan. So sometimes he focuses on proving harakat in these kinds of jawahir. صور نوعیه or jawhar, because jawhar is 5: madde, surat, jism, nafs, aql. Okay, Sowar or Jawhari. So sometimes he argues for them. Sometimes Mulla Sadra argues that Jism is Sayyal. So the focus is not on Surat or Surat No'iyya, it's on Jism. And sometimes Mulla Sadra argues that in Nafs we have harakat jawhariyah. So the only thing that doesn't have harakat jawhariyah is aql, because aql as one type of jawhar is different from human aql. Aql over there means mujarrad tam, something which is 100% actual. There is no potentiality. When there is no potentiality, there is no change, whether gradual, which is harakah, or not gradual, which is kawn و fasad. No change happens in uqul mujarrade. So he has 9 arguments. We don't go to these arguments. Just Sheikh Ubudiyat says that the most important argument of Mulla Sadra is used to show that in the whole universe or nature, or physical, it's better to say physical world, alam tabi'at, in the whole physical world there is harakah based on everything in this physical world having time. So he says everything has time, everything is, you can say, affected by time, everything goes through time, and time needs harakat jawhari. One of the things that make things different from each other is time. Something today and something 10 years ago are not different things, but are not also in the same condition. Passage of time affects them. Why? because they themselves inside have changed and their own timing. We have a general time which is just based on contract. We say we make the motion of planets and stars around sun as the basis year, month, week, day, etc. But the main time for everything is the time which they have inside as the fourth dimension, because of time being the measure of their own substantial motion. So he says everything has timing, and therefore it must be sayyal, it must be gradual, and this means it must have harakat jawhari. Another thing that we should know about Mulla Sadra's discussion about harakat jawhari is what he called harakat jawhari ishtidadi, means something becomes stronger according to asalat wujud and tashkik fil wujud, primordiality of existence and greatness of existence. When you go higher in this ladder of existence, there is more perfection. Okay, now how connect this to harakat jawhari? There are different possibilities, but one main type of haraka is that something becomes more and more perfect, kamil. But when something becomes more perfect, you shouldn't think that it means something is there fixed, then another perfection is added. Although philosophers may talk about kamal thani, kamal awwali, primary perfection, secondary perfection, but it is not like, for example, a pool that has some water and then you add water. No, it's a pool that has at some time some level of water, and this water is changing, another time has more water. Not that the previous water remains and something is added. No, the previous water has gone and more water has taken its place, because it's sayyal. Also, in harakat ishtidadi, this is one also very important discussion. In some of the lectures in Hawza, I mentioned this point that according to Mulla Sadra, human beings can be different species, anwa. We think all human beings are haywan and natiq, but according to Mulla Sadra, we can abstract maqulat at each moment, either different human beings or the same human being in different times maybe can be subject to different abstractions. Maybe a human being at some point is a human being, at some point is a pig, a dog, a monkey, a donkey. When we have يوم ينفخ في الصور فتأتون أفواجا, the day that trumpet is blown and people come in groups. According to some hadith, it means people come in different groups of animals and human beings. Some are resurrected as human beings, some are resurrected as some animals, because they didn't develop their humanity, they didn't safeguard their humanity. So maskh, which happened to some people and they were made into apes, ashabu sabt, this is not unique, this is not an exception. What was exception was that their inner reality was manifest in dunya. Otherwise, on the day of judgment, their resurrection, many people will be resurrected like animals, because they were not developing their fitra, their humanity. So, it is the idea of Mulla Sadra that human beings can belong to different anwa species. Another idea which is very, very much connected to this is that at each point you can abstract different maqula. You remember we said masafa of harakat, distance of masafa, is the category that can be abstracted from it at each point. Like the color of apple changes, so you can abstract at each point different mahiya, different color, yellow, red, green, etc. So here also the same mahiya, which may look for you just one mahiya, if you carefully and closely study, you will see that at one point it's this mahiya, at another point another mahiya. It's different categories or different subcategories. For example, when it comes to embryo, at some point this embryo is zygote, then becomes clot, then becomes some bones and flesh, and then finally through harakat jawhari we have creation of human soul from the body. Jismaniyatul hudus, rawhaniyatul baqa. According to Mulla Sadra, soul comes from the development of the body. Soul is not coming from the realm of the souls and then belonging to the body. The same body is develops, and then the soul is a result of harakat jawhari of body. Ayatollah Mutahari in one of his books say it's the same. For example, rice, meat, food, water that parents eat, then they go to the creation of the embryo, and then when the mother is pregnant, the same food that mother eats or the water that drinks go to the embryo, and that become at some point flesh, blood, etc. At some point becomes the soul. But just at the beginning, soul is jismaniya, corporeal. As soon as soul exists, it's rawhaniya. Rawhaniya, it's rawhani, it's spiritual. Therefore, it remains forever. So it's possible for Mulla Sadra to have transformation in the essence, not in the way that philosophers say انقلاب در ماهیت is muhal. Transformation in the nature, they say it's muhal. For example, something which is mumkin cannot become wajib, or something which has this genus or differentia cannot change. Mulla Sadra says no. At the same time, it cannot change, but by the passage of time, yes, they can change, and there is no problem. Hope, Alhamdulillah, discussion about Harakat Jawhari, lesson 7 finished. Now lesson 8 is about Ilm Huzuri, knowledge by presence, or the idea that any kind of knowledge needs immaterial existence. Tajarrud wujud. You cannot have knowledge, even knowledge which is conceptual, ilm husuli, without an immaterial knower, which is the soul. Soul is mujarrad. Something physical cannot have knowledge. Something physical even doesn't have understanding of itself. For example, if you have a piece of wood or stone, they don't even understand their own different parts, let alone something which is next to them. كل عاقل فهو مجرد. Everything which has understanding has to be immaterial. So inshallah we are going to discuss Ilm Huzuri in lesson 8. I mentioned some introductory points, and inshallah after a week, if possible, and we have ability to connect, then we will inshallah continue. inshallah, bi'iznillah, next Tuesday the plan is I will be in Kenya, inshallah, with your du'as. So we will see how we can keep the class or not. In order to explain that the reality of knowledge goes back to immaterial existence, we have to discuss two things. Very nicely, he has singled out these 2 points. One, we need to show that knowledge is a matter of presence. You remember, and we will keep inshallah mentioning this here also, we said if it is ilm huzuri, is huzur al-ma'lum lada al-alim. What is known is present for the knower. If it is ilm husuli, is huzur or surat al-ma'lum lada al-alim. Again, is presence, but presence of the image of what is known for the knower. So either what is known itself is present for alim, or image of it is present. This is the difference between ilm huzuli and husuli. But in both of them, something is present for the knower. So, number one, knowledge is a matter of presence. Number two, presence of something for the knower needs tajarrud, immateriality. Because those things which are material, they don't have presence for each other. They are absent from each other. There is no window, there is no room for them to acknowledge presence of each other. Okay, so there are 2 points. Ilm is a matter of presence, and presence is a matter of tajarrud, being immaterial. So inshallah we have to discuss this in more details. Before we reach main discussions, Sheikh Ubudiyat says that in order to have knowledge, which he uses that term, the letter K, knowledge, we can consider 4 options. Option 1, sometimes something is aware of itself. We say A has knowledge because it is aware of itself. You know, one type of ilm huzuri is knowledge about your nafs, your own self. So this is one type of knowledge. Number 2, something is the criteria for a reality being aware of itself. Okay, I, for example, am known to someone. So if I am known to someone, either my soul, my spirit has to be known to his spirit, or an image of me must be known to him through ilm husuli, maybe as an image of me. Either I am myself present or my image. 2 types of knowledge. 3, sometimes knowledge is the criteria for something being aware of another reality. I am aware of something else, not that something is aware of me. I am aware of something. Number 4, sometimes something is criteria for something knowing something else. I'm neither here the knower or the known. I am helping the knower knows what is known. So there are 4 options and cannot be more than 4. There is exclusiveness here because he says, you know, we can use taqsim al-thunai, a matter of yes and no. We can say the reality of K is either the criteria for K being knowledgeable or another thing being knowledgeable. If it is K being knowledgeable, either it is about knowledge about himself or other things. If it is for something else being knowledgeable, then it's again either for that thing being knowledgeable about K or about something else. So there are 4 options which we mentioned. 2 of these are ilm huzuri and 2 are ilm husuli. The first 2, منات عالم بودن خودش به خودش, knowledge about itself. This is علم حضوری. or عالم بودن واقعیت دیگری به خودش, something is aware of me. This is علم حضوری again. I am present for that thing. But عالم بودن خودش به واقعیت دیگری or عالم بودن واقعیت دیگری به دیگری, in both of these 2 becomes علم حصولی. Each of these, sometimes knowledge is the same as essence. We say it, ilm is ayn zat, it's the same as essence. Sometimes it's additional, زائد بر ذات. For example, when it comes to ilm husuli, our knowledge is additional to us. We didn't have it and we have to acquire it, we may lose it. It's additional, it's زائد بر ذات. But sometimes it is ayn zat, like knowledge of Allah about himself and even about other things is in his essence. So he says at the very last paragraph of page 128, in order to explain what's the way to distinguish between ilm huzuri and husuli and what's the criteria for ilm huzuri and husuli, we can say علم حضوری علمی است که در آن علم و معلوم یکی هستند. We can say knowledge by presence is the type of knowledge in which knowledge and what is known are the same. برخلاف علم حصولی که در آن علم مغایر معلوم است. In conceptual knowledge, knowledge is different from what is known. Mulla Sadra in Asfar puts it in this way. إن العلم قد يكون نفس المعلوم الخارجي وقد يكون غيره. Knowledge is sometimes the same as what is known, the objective thing which is known, and sometimes is different. If it is the same, it's حضوری. نیز میتوان گفت, we can also say it in this way, علم حضوری علمی است که بر انطباق بر معلوم متوقف نیست. علم حضوری doesn't need correspondence. You know, علم حصولی, we say it is true when the image corresponds to the external reality. For example, I say Zaid is standing up. This image, if it corresponds to the real world, external world, then it is true, otherwise false. But in ilm huzuri, we don't need to correspond to something outside because ma'lum is present for us. Therefore, there cannot be any mistake. علم حضوری علمی است که بر انطباق بر معلوم متوقف نیست. Knowledge by presence is a type of knowledge that does not depend on corresponding to what is known. Unlike علم حصولی که قوام آن به انطباق بر معلوم است. The whole idea of علم حصولی, the core of it is corresponding to what is known. So, in ilm husuli, as a result, we have 2 things. You remember we kept saying this many times. معلوم بالذات, معلوم بالعرض. When I see someone or I'm talking to someone, philosophers say معلوم بالذات is in my mind. معلوم بالعرض is that person outside. What is known بالذات primarily and essentially is image of that thing which is present for me. Then that image, like a mirror, reflects and relays what is outside. So what is outside is not known to me directly. It's بالعرض. What is known to me directly is the image of it. Image of flower, image of water, image of a person is معلومة بالذات. And this image, of course, as an image is known to me through علم حضوری. But what it relays and reflects is علم حصولي. So the image itself is a quality inside us, for example, كيف نفساني. But what it shows, maybe it's جوهر or it's aras, it's color, it's shape, etc. So معلوم بالذات خود معلوم به علم حضوری است. What is known primarily is known through knowledge by presence, because that image is present for us, not through conceptual knowledge. It's not that we have image of the image and then image of the image of the image. It becomes tasalsul. So reality of knowledge is nothing other than a being present for the knower. Sometimes image of something, or sometimes that thing itself. If image is present, حضور صورة المعلوم لدى العالم, this is حصولي. If حضور المعلوم لدى العالم, then this is حضوري. Inshallah, we continue this discussion from this heading. بازگشت حضور به تجرد وجود. We said there are 2 points that we want to discuss. One is that knowledge is a matter of presence. We discussed it. The second point, which is very important, is that presence can only happen for mujarradat. Material things cannot be present for each other. This is what, inshallah, we will discuss bi'iznillah in the next session. Then we have different levels of ilm huzuri, and we discuss how our understanding follows the type of existence of what is understood, etc. Inshallah, in the next session. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Do you have any question? No question?
Thank you. Thank you, Sheikh.
May Allah bless you, inshallah. So, inshallah, we should pray also for each other and for all mu'mineen and those who are ill tonight, the birth of Imam Raza alayhi salam. We ask Allah for shifa for all people who are ill, and for hajat of mu'mineen and mu'minat being inshallah granted to them. Iltimas dua. Fi amallah. Thank you very much. Wada hafiz.